right, good morning, everybody. Whoa, where'd my stuff go? There it is. Hi there. So my name is Samantha Maribon with Melco's application team. We're doing our design shop talk today. We try to do these on a weekly basis to try to get some questions answered for you. If you have questions while we're live, please type them in the chat. I've got another monitor set up over here to kind of keep track of any questions that come in. So just type them down while I'm talking. I only have one question that was pre-submitted, so please start typing. If it looks like I'm gonna get offline and you're still typing, submit, put a hold on or something, or 1 sec, or I don't know, something in the chat so I don't accidentally hang up on you and end the live before you get to finish typing your question. So I'll go ahead and get started with the question that was sent in ahead of time. After I make sure both Facebook's up and YouTube. Excellent. Okay. All right. So the question sent in was, how do I create a sew file for the shield? It measures 12 by 6.3. It's going to go on a sweatshirt. So the cotton sweatshirt is interesting info, but really what you're looking at is you've got this shape that is fairly custom, well, very custom, right? So, and I assume you're going to want to sew it on the white around here using a white thread on that white felt, maybe through here so it tacks down in the middle a little bit as well. All right, so how do we go about creating that? So one, you need a good image, a scan, some sort, the original art would be ideal. If you don't have it, you can, there's a little bit of distortion, so you might have to tweak it, but if you take your camera, lay it flat down on a table and take a picture straight down on the item and bring your picture into DesignShop. Make sure you have some sort of scale on there if you don't know the exact size. If you know the exact size, well, then you can bring it in, right? So I pasted it into DesignShop, and then you said it was 6.3 tall. So I drew a line using this. I literally just did that. And then I came over and said, okay, make that thing 6.3 tall. Okay? And that's what this is. So then I get to scale this thing. So I rotated it around to be mostly straight. You can use these guidelines if you want to actually get it a little more accurate. Since I'm going to be tracing it anyway, I didn't find much use for that. But you can, put a guideline on there, select the art, and, rotate it around little by little. And see, that's better. So those are pretty much all on the line there. All right, so now I've got it straight. And then again, I can use my guidelines if I want to go, all right, there's the top and there's the bottom. So is my line, is that 6.3? Well, no. So you can see my image is a little short. It's cut off here, so I'm gonna just call it good for now. But basically you would just keep scaling this around until it's exact size that you want. All right. And then you can use this measurement tool if you want to check the other dimension and go, all right, so from there to there is, around 12. Okay. All right. So once you have that in here, I'm going to delete the guidelines just because I don't want to look at them. And I'm going to turn this off for now. So from here, now you get to make decisions, right? So you can come in and do your walk stitch, right? So where do you want that along this border? Right along the green, in the middle, just slightly off, and you literally just draw your shape around here. If you have vector art, this gets much simpler because you can just, do an offset of the line, and it will create the shape for you, and you're not going to have to sit here and trace around it, right? So what I always suggest is if you're going to trace these sorts of things, you're going to want to trace it, then either sew it out and check it against the item you're going to use, or print it 1-to-1 if you don't want to do a sew out on some stabilizer or a spare shirt just to check the shape. So print it out 1-to-1 using the print manager. And then after you do that, you can, cut it out or lay your actual patch on top of it and go through there. So all I'm doing is left clicks and right clicks. So your right clicks are your curved points. Your left clicks are straight points, right? So that's literally all I'm doing here. All right, almost. I probably, if I were doing this for an actual client, I would not go nearly as fast as I'm going now. So I'd make sure it was a little more uniform, zoom in and pan around sort of thing. But I don't know, it's not that bad right now. All right, so when I want to close the shape, I can either go click on it again, or I can hold the shift key and hit enter and it will close it. All right, so shift close closes it. So now I've got a placement. If there's any areas like in here, I don't quite like that, like this little curvy area, I can go adjust my wireframe by moving these points around, adding additional points, you know, cleaning it up so it looks a little cleaner. Over here is a little close, so I'm going to go change that part of the outline. All right, so this aspect of it is very subjective, right? So this is wireframe editing. It's what looks good to me. I don't want to be too close to the edge of the patch so it pops off, but I want it to be off the green, so I want to have enough pad there. So, all right. Now, how do I turn this into something that works? Well, another thing you got to decide, do you want to sew down in here so that the patch isn't going to kind of fluff up in the middle? I probably would. So in that case, I'd come over here and decide, do I want to keep it uniform looking by doing, you know, something like that? Or do I just want to do a straight line and call it good? Again, those are design decisions you would have to decide of what you think looks good, right? So shift enter to close the shape. And maybe through here I just do a single line down the middle. Maybe we just do that. There. Okay. So I've got the center secured. I've got the border secured. Now we got to turn this into something that actually sews, right? So what do we do with that? So I would select all this and I would do this first one as one color. So that's going to be a placement stitch. So I would basically hoop my shirt, sew this down, just that one. And then I'd take my patch and lay it down over it. You can pin it, use spray adhesive. If it's got a sticky back, peel and stick, you know, however it comes to you. I probably would then sew this as a single color and just tack it down right there using a bean stitch, because I can hold my patch, sew that down, and then double check its placement. Then if it shifted or something weird happened and I need to move it, I only have this line of stitching to cut out versus everything. So that's what I would probably do. And then I would copy this one and sew that one next. And again, instead of a normal, I would do that as a bean stitch. Or maybe you want that zigzag look. So in that case, I'd need to make the border a little bit bigger and do a zigzag, which I'll show you how to do that in a sec. So I'd probably do that one as a bean, and then both of these as a bean afterwards. And there we go. So of course I'd sew these all as one color, but this way my placement, so, oh, gotta copy and paste that one more time. There we go. Give that a different color. All right, so there's my placement. That's gonna be the tack down to hold it. I want that one first though. So placement, tack it down, check position, then I would sew it down all the way around and then do these things last. Cool. That's probably how I'd do it. All right, and that would sew it down onto your shirt. All right, so yeah. Now, what if you want to change that border instead of to be a bean stitch? What if you want it to look like a tackle? So I'm going to go ahead and just hold my shift key down and add a vector fill just so I can do this object offset outline, and I don't know. All right, so I don't know how big that is. I guess I could measure it. I'm just trying to make it offset a little bit bigger. Michael, I'll get to your question in just a minute. Let me do this real quick. All right, so let's say that's where I want my zigzag. So instead of a bean stitch, I want to do a zigzag. So again, I'm going to hold shift on that shape, click on that, and let's turn off the vector. Let's turn that into a tackle stitch and maybe make that a little wider. Cool. And then I don't like what it's doing over here, so I'm going to delete that point. There, that's better. Let's see, any other weird spots? No, there you go. So if you want that kind of look, all right, I still need a placement. I still need a tack down to hold it down. This one I probably would just do as a normal run stitch along with those guys. And then I would sew this last as the finished stitch around. So I'd still want that to hold it still so that I don't have to have my hands in the machine. These two I still would probably want to just tack down the middle so it's not tending to pop up. And then that guy to give it that tackle twill look. All right, so there's a few ways you can handle that. All right, any questions on this example here? All right, how can you correct errors in Design Checker like stitches over 127 points? All right, so the Design Checker, whenever you come up with things, so if you click on the thing, it will put a little propeller on where the issue is, right? So stitches over 127 points, those means you've got really long pieces of thread in there. So you would need to go check your stitch lengths and change your stitch lengths for the elements. Or if it's an expanded file and you've got really long jump stitches or like really long pieces of thread, you'd have to manually go add stitches on there. Some of the other errors are needle penetration density. Again, if you click on it, it'll show you, hey, you've got in this area, there's a ton of stitches. Well, in that case, you'd need to go add holes. You literally have to look at each area and go work on it. So needle penetration density means there's too many stitches in that area. So you'd want to go reduce density, add holes. If you've got a bunch of fill layers stacked up, you'd want to add holes in the lower layers so that you're not sewing on sewing on sewing on sewing. So you're not beating it to death. Stitches too small, I forget what that one is, under 12 points, under 9 points, I don't know. Basically, if the stitches are way too small, how would you deal with that? Well, you go again, click on it, see where it is, and see, is it just a tie stitch? Is it a whole bunch of tiny little stitches? If it's tiny little stitches, there's different ways you can do it. You can make the element larger. You can add pull offset, which again will make the stitches longer. So maybe 2 points of pull offset will take it from 10 points to 12 and it'll clear the error. So every time you get things over here, if you click on whatever it says over on the design, it'll have a propeller that pops up, and then you zoom in for that area and figure out what's going on, right? So lack of tie-in and tie-out stitches, that's another one. So in those cases, you'd select this, go into the properties, and go turn on tie-in and tie-out. So make sure these are actually turned on. Things like that. So remember, the Design Checker is for native DesignShop files, not for expanded, okay? So it's for files you create yourself to help make sure, to give you some things to go check, right? So I think those are the major errors you'll get. Needle penetration, there's too many stitches in a small area, so you look at that area and go see, get rid of some of the overlap. Tiny stitches, make the element bigger, or add pull offset. Sometimes that's just enough to fix it. So it's very individual of studying the area that has the error and figuring out what is the actual problem, right? So this tells you what it is. The stitches are too long. You've got too many stitches. You've got stitches that are too small. You don't have tie-ins. You don't have tie-offs. So it'll tell you what the error is. So then you just got to look at it and how do you want to fix that, right? So if I've got 5 things stacked on top of each other so that it's sewing, a gazillion stitches in a small area, maybe I need to redo that area so I only have 2 things on top of each other, right? So it's gonna be a situational base, looking at your design, looking at where the error is and fixing it. Does that make sense, Michael? We did get you a link on the Design Checker feature, so you can check that out in the comments. It's both on Facebook and YouTube. All right, what other questions do you guys have before we call it a day? Because this is the only one I had sent in ahead of time. Okay, cool. I'm glad that helped. But yeah, kind of like this as tackle twill. All right, I will hang on for a minute or so in case someone's frantically typing in questions. So if you've got a question, please type them in. Don't send them to me privately ever. I don't really see those. So you'll always want to either fill out the form if you don't want to put it in live. There's the form on the Melco service site. So if you go to the Melco service site, you can go click on the FAQ, click on DesignShop, and down here you click on that and it'll take you to a form, same thing as here, where you can type in question. How do you remove short stitches? You just turn them off, right? So short stitches are, here, let's draw one. All right, so if I got a satin stitch through here, and let's make that 30, I'm gonna go into the properties, turn off these corners, so that'll be ugly, there we go. All right, top stitching, right there, short stitch. Okay, so number one, what is a short stitch? So if you notice on this, as it's going to turn the corner, some of these stitches are short from the edge of the wireframe. So this is the wireframe, and rather than coming every stitch to the edge, it's trying to help reduce the stitch density around that turn. So it's doing these short stitches along there. So every other stitch essentially is coming down. So it's randomizing all the other stitches coming around to try to help avoid that that extreme needle penetrations where you end up getting sew problems because there's so many stitches in a tiny area, right? So this type of curve, the sharp point, if we went and sewed this like this, one, it's doing these, the stitches are getting too long, so it's turning it into a random. But pretend this was all satin. Would this sew very well, swinging around like that? So it's basically every time it comes to the edge, it's coming back to the center. So by the time it's doing this turn, you're going up here to the center, to the center, to the center. So you're getting a gazillion stitches right in this area. So in practice, you have so much thread there that it's going to mushroom out and it's not going to look like this nice pretty point, right? So short stitches right here, if I turn those off, now it's even worse. Now every stitch is coming to the end, to the edge. So I will have many, 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 many stitches in here, and it's going to be even worse. So right here is where you turn the short stitches off. So if you want them off, you can. In this example, you can do things like this. You can turn these on, and it will clean up that corner by changing the stitch direction, capping it, right? So, but yeah, that's short stitches are right here. You just turn them off if you don't want them, or turn them back on. Okay, so Thor's Digitized Designs. Hopefully that helps. We did get you a link in the comments to where you can find the little form to put questions in ahead of time. That way, if you send them in whenever you're thinking about them, they'll be there for next week, and you don't have to remember to join live if you're unavailable, or remember, oh, I had a question. What was it? I don't know at this point, you know. Go ahead and type it in. All right, what other questions do we have before we call it a day? I haven't talked about short stitches in a long time. I don't think I've ever done that in a live. Nice question. I think the last time I did that was in 2018 when I was teaching the private classes. All right. I'll hold on for just a second more in case anyone else has questions. And if not, I will be back next Thursday. Let me check my calendar just to make sure there's nothing magical. Nope, nothing magical there. And then my flight the week after is late enough. I'll still be able to do this, so we're good there too. Awesome. All right, so any other questions before we call it a day? All right, well, I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day to join. If you have questions, just send them in. Things you want to learn about, let us know. I enjoy coming up with examples and trying to explain things. So I will be back next week. Until then, have some fun sewing, and I will talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.